"Your father destroyed my family," he whispered, pressing cold steel to my temple in the abandoned warehouse's suffocating darkness. "Now you'll pay his debt." But when our eyes met in that breath between life and death, something shifted, something that made vengeance falter and fate tighten its grip. In that moment, I didn't see just the killer who'd taken me. I saw the shattered man beneath the monster. And he didn't see just his enemy's daughter. He saw the woman who would either destroy him completely or save what remained of his soul. Neither of us knew that choice had already been stolen. Destiny had its own cruel plans, written in blood and bound by sins we'd never committed. Rain hammered against the windows of the Second Chances Youth Foundation like accusations Jasmine Monroe could never quite escape. She stood at her cramped office desk in East Atlanta, reviewing scholarship applications while the city drowned outside. For years had passed since she'd fled Chicago, yet the smell of gunpowder and her mother's perfume still haunted her dreams. Her weathered hands traced the small scar on her wrist, a reminder of the night she'd learned that family could be more dangerous than any stranger. Vincent Castellano's daughter had died in Chicago. Jasmine Monroe had risen from those ashes, determined to build something clean from the dirt of her father's choices. The Second Chances Youth Foundation looked to her for guidance, but inside, she remained that terrified 19-year-old girl, frozen beside her mother's body, waiting for men with guns to decide if she lived or died. The nonprofit had become her redemption, proof that Castellano blood didn't have to poison everything it touched. Serafina had vanished that terrible night. No, wrong memory. Mother had died that terrible night, taking with her every illusion Jasmine had harbored about her father being anything other than a coward and a thief. The autumn rain carried sounds from the street below, car horns mixing with distant sirens, the eternal soundtrack of a city that never stopped moving forward. Life continued its relentless march while Jasmine remained trapped between the person she'd been and the person she was still trying to become. Her board members urged her to hire more staff, to delegate the late nights and endless paperwork. But trust felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Every face might hide recognition. Every new name might connect back to Chicago and the debts her father had left unpaid. "Ms. Monroe?" Deshawn's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. The 17-year-old volunteer stood in her doorway, his hoodie dripping rainwater onto the worn carpet. "You staying late again?" Jasmine summoned a smile that had become her second skin. Her kids deserved better than a broken director, even if pretending wholeness felt like wearing armor made of thorns. "Just finishing up. Get home safe, okay?" He nodded and disappeared into the storm, leaving Jasmine alone with scholarship applications and ghosts that had names and faces and bullet wounds she couldn't forget. The rain beckoned with its promise of normalcy, of a world where wounds could heal and hearts could mend. With one last glance at the window where darkness pressed against glass like something seeking entry, Jasmine gathered her things to face another night of sleeping with one eye open and pepper spray under her pillow. The black Range Rover sat in the parking garage's deepest shadow, its engine a predatory purr in the concrete silence. Dante Cross watched Jasmine Monroe through tinted windows, his phone displaying the last 4 months of surveillance photos. Her morning coffee runs, her evening lockup routines, the way she unconsciously checked over her shoulder every 6 steps. Vincent Castellano's daughter transformed the East Atlanta streets into a tapestry of goodness and charity. Donors praised her vision while troubled kids found hope in her programs. The nonprofit director acknowledged each gesture of gratitude with practiced grace, while something wounded prowled beneath her skin, seeking safety it would never find. Every movement, every interaction, every carefully constructed smile registered with cold calculation. Yet nothing satisfied the rage within. For years of planning, for years of watching Marcus's prison cell become his tomb, for years of building toward this single night. "Fresh intelligence, boss." Taiwo's voice crackled through the Bluetooth earpiece. "Target follows same pattern. Locks up between 11 and 11:15. Parking garage, level 3. Silver Honda. Alone." Dante accepted the update with quiet acknowledgement, understanding that vengeance required precision. Vincent Castellano had destroyed the Cross family with testimony and theft. Tonight, his daughter would learn that some debts transcended death itself. A commotion near the Foundation's entrance caught his attention. Jasmine saying goodbye to the teen volunteer, both of them outlined in the doorway's warm light. Their easy rapport struck something deep within his chest, a reminder of the brother who'd wanted to teach children, to make a difference, to build instead of destroy. The thought brought familiar pain, sharp and unforgiving. Somewhere in a prison morgue, Marcus's body lay cold and catalogued, another statistic in a system that ground up young black men and called it justice. The future had died with him in that cell, hanged with a sheet Vincent Castellano's testimony had provided. "She's moving," Andre confirmed from his position near the stairwell. "On schedule." Dante's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "Just her. Make it clean. Let Vincent's ghost watch his daughter pay for his sins." But somewhere beneath the rage and calculation, something whispered that tonight would change everything. That the woman walking toward her car with a red umbrella barely adequate against the storm was more than just a target. She was destiny, wearing his enemy's face. Jasmine locked the Foundation's door with her usual 3-check ritual: handle, deadbolt, handle again. Rain soaked through her jacket as she hurried toward the parking garage, her red umbrella a splash of color against concrete gray. 11:13. Right on schedule. Predictable as clockwork. The thought sent unease trickling down her spine. The parking garage was a tomb of empty spaces and humming fluorescent lights. Her silver Honda sat exactly where she'd left it that morning. Level 3, corner spot, back to the wall. Security habits from a life she'd tried to leave behind. Jasmine's hand closed around her keys, already sorted to have the car fob ready.
Get in.
Lock doors. Check back seat.
Drive.
The routine had kept her alive for 4 years. Tonight would be no different. Except tonight, the air tasted wrong. She froze 3 steps from her car, every nerve suddenly screaming warnings her conscious mind struggled to interpret. The garage was too quiet. The shadows too deep. That primal awareness that separated prey from predator flooded her system with adrenaline. "Hello." Her voice echoed off concrete, swallowed by empty space. The response came from behind, a cloth pressed over her mouth and nose, chemical sweet and suffocating.
Chloroform.
Just like in the movies, except real terror had no soundtrack, no slow-motion heroics. Jasmine fought with everything she had. Her elbow connected with someone's ribs hard enough to produce a grunt. Her keys became weapons, slashing at air and connecting with flesh. She twisted, kicked, clawed at the arms that held her with iron strength. Grab her legs. A voice, professional and detached. More hands. Too many. Her vision tunneled as oxygen deprivation and chemicals combined to drag her under. The parking garage tilted, fluorescent lights bleeding into smears of brightness. This is about Chicago. About father. The debt is finally due. Her last conscious sensation was strong arms catching her falling body with surprising gentleness. Then a voice, smooth as aged whiskey and cold as a Chicago winter, that would replay in her nightmares and dreams for the rest of her life. "Got her. Let's move." Jasmine Monroe died in that parking garage. What woke up in the warehouse would be something else entirely. For years ago, in a Chicago penthouse that smelled like money and lies, Vincent Castellano had made choices that would echo through lives he'd never meet. His daughter Jasmine had been 19, naive, and desperate to believe her father was the man he pretended to be. Across the city, in a high-rise that overlooked the same Chicago skyline, Dante Cross had been building an empire with his brother Marcus. 2 kids from the South Side who'd clawed their way to power through loyalty, violence, and a code that said family came before everything. What neither of them knew was that Vincent Castellano would connect their worlds in blood and betrayal, setting in motion a collision that would take 4 years to complete. Jasmine woke to the smell of mildew and motor oil, her head pounding like someone had used it for drum practice. She forced her eyes open, taking in the abandoned warehouse around her. Rusted machinery casting skeletal shadows, broken windows letting in slices of gray dawn light, and most terrifyingly, 3 men standing between her and the only visible exit. She was zip-tied to a metal chair, her arms screaming from the awkward angle. Terror clawed at her throat, but she forced it down with the same discipline that had kept her alive for 4 years. Panic wouldn't save her. Information might. Her fingers explored the zip ties by touch. Industrial grade, tight enough to bite but not cut circulation. The chair was bolted to the concrete floor. Professional work. Whoever had taken her knew what they were doing. "Who are you?" she demanded, proud that her voice barely shook. "What do you want?" The men exchanged glances, but said nothing. They didn't have to. The door opened with a screech of protesting hinges that made her flinch, and he walked in. Dante Cross moved like violence wrapped in expensive tailoring. 6'3" of lean muscle poured into a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, his dark skin marked with scars that told stories his cold brown eyes refused to share. Power radiated from him like heat from asphalt in summer. Dangerous, inescapable, absolute. He was beautiful the way a storm was beautiful. Devastating and impossible to look away from. "Jasmine Castellano," he said, each syllable precise, controlled. "Though you go by Monroe now." Cute touch. Her blood turned to ice. No one knew that name. No one from her old life was supposed to find her. She'd been so careful, so methodical in building her new identity. For years of looking over her shoulder, and somehow this man had found what she'd tried so hard to bury. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied, because what else could she do? He smiled without humor and produced a photograph, her father shaking hands with men in suits, FBI badges visible on nearby tables. The betrayal captured in glossy 8x10 format, impossible to deny. "Your father destroyed my family," Dante continued, moving closer until she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that her terrified brain catalogued against her will. Sandalwood and leather, and something darker underneath. "Vincent Castellano stole from me, then sent my brother to prison with his testimony. Marcus killed himself rather than serve 25 years behind bars. He was 23 years old." Understanding hit like a physical blow, driving the air from her lungs. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mugging gone wrong or a case of mistaken identity. This was the debt finally coming due, payment extracted from the only person Vincent had left behind. "I was 19, Jasmine whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. "I didn't know what he did until after. I had nothing to do with. Doesn't matter." Dante's voice was flat, final, like a judge reading a death sentence. "You're his daughter. His legacy. His blood runs in your veins. And you're going to pay for his sins." He pulled a gun from his shoulder holster. Matte black, professional, deadly. The kind of weapon that didn't exist in legal markets. Pressed it to her temple with enough force to make her gasp, the metal cold against her skin. "Your father destroyed my family," he repeated, softer this time, almost gentle. "Now you'll pay his debt." Their eyes met, and everything changed. Dante had looked into the eyes of men he'd killed. Dozens of them over the years he'd spent building the Phantom Syndicate from street-level hustling to citywide power. He'd seen fear, defiance, resignation, rage. He'd become immune to their humanity, necessary armor for the life he led. But Jasmine Castellano didn't look at him with any of those expected emotions. Her brown eyes, flecked with gold in the warehouse's dim lighting, held something that cut through his carefully constructed walls like they were paper instead of steel. Grief. Understanding. And beneath it all, a resigned acceptance that broke something in his chest he'd thought permanently calcified. "Do it," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the gun pressed to her temple. "But know that killing me won't bring your brother back. It won't undo what my father did. It'll just add another body to the pile of his mistakes." His finger hovered on the trigger. This should be easy. She was Vincent's daughter. Blood for blood, debt for debt. The code he'd lived by since Marcus's death demanded her life as payment. Justice required her sacrifice. So, Why couldn't he pull the trigger?
Boss.
Andre stepped forward uncertainly, his hand moving toward his own weapon. You want us to? Get out, Dante ordered harshly, his eyes never leaving Jasmine's face. But I said get out. His voice cracked like a whip, and the three men scrambled for the exit, leaving him alone with the woman he'd planned to execute. Silence stretched between them, broken only by rain hammering the warehouse roof and their synchronized breathing. Dante lowered the gun slowly, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. His wolf, that primal part of himself that operated on instinct rather than reason, howled with confusion. This is wrong.
She's not the enemy.
She's something else. Something important. Why did he do it? Dante asked finally, his voice rough. Your father. Why did he betray us? Jasmine's laugh was bitter, hollow, the sound of someone who'd asked herself the same question 1,000 times. He said he did it for me, to get me away from that life before it destroyed me too. He took your money to buy me a future, then testified to buy himself immunity. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Some future, right? You didn't know. I suspected. But I was a naive kid who wanted to believe her father was a good man. She met his gaze steadily, unflinching despite the tear that finally escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. I learned better the night men came to our house looking for Vincent. My mother tried to protect him, and they... Her voice broke. Dante watched emotions flicker across her face, grief, rage, guilt, sorrow, each one hitting him with unexpected force. They killed her in front of me, she continued, barely above a whisper. Shot her 3 times while I hid behind the couch like a coward. My father ran, just left me there with her body, and disappeared into the night. The feds found me 3 days later, half-starved and catatonic, covered in my mother's dried blood. So no, I didn't know the specifics of his betrayal, but I paid for his choices anyway. Dante's carefully maintained hatred wavered like a candle flame in wind. Vincent Castellano had destroyed both their families, Dante's through betrayal, Jasmine's through cowardice. They were both victims of the same man's sins, casualties of a war neither had chosen to fight. What happened to your father? He asked, holstering his weapon with hands that shook slightly.
Dead.
A car accident 2 years ago, though I'm sure it wasn't an accident. Someone collected their debt before you could. She paused, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. You can kill me if you need to. If it'll bring you peace or satisfy your code or whatever lets you sleep at night. But it won't bring back Marcus. And it won't make Vincent pay. He's already beyond your reach. Dante turned away, his mind racing through calculations that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with a dangerous pull he felt toward this woman who should have been nothing more than a target. A means to an end, a message written in blood. But she wasn't any of those things. She was a survivor just like him. Someone who'd been broken by violence and rebuilt herself into something stronger. Someone who'd chosen to help kids escape the cycle that had destroyed her family. What's your nonprofit called? He asked abruptly, the question surprising them both. Confusion flickered across her face. Second Chances Youth Foundation. Why? Because, Dante said, making a decision that would either save them both or destroy everything he'd built. You're not dying today, Jasmine Castellano. But you're not going free either. They moved her to one of Dante's safe houses. A converted loft in an industrial part of town, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlanta skyline. Luxurious for a prison, but a prison nonetheless. Guards at every exit, cameras in every room except the bedroom and bathroom. A gilded cage with a view. You'll stay here until I decide what to do with you, Dante informed her as Andre unlocked her zip ties with a knife that looked like it had seen plenty of use. Her wrists were raw and bleeding slightly, purple bruises already forming. So, what? I'm a hostage now instead of a corpse. Jasmine rubbed feeling back into her hands, refusing to show weakness even as relief flooded through her veins. Alive was better than dead, no matter how temporary the reprieve. Consider it protective custody. He moved to the bar and poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a crystal tumbler that probably cost more than her car payment. Your father had other enemies. If they find out you're alive and accessible, they'll come for you to send their own messages. Just like I did. How considerate of you to be worried about my safety, she shot back, sarcasm masking genuine fear. Forgive me if I don't thank you for kidnapping me at gunpoint. Dante's lips quirked in something that might have been amusement. Don't mistake necessity for kindness, Ms. Monroe. You're alive because killing you serves no purpose. That could change. But over the following days, something did change, though neither would admit it. Dante visited daily, ostensibly to ensure she wasn't planning escape. But their conversations stretched from minutes to hours, covering everything from Marcus's childhood pranks to Jasmine's work with at-risk youth to the complicated legacy of fathers who chose violence over family. On the 3rd day, he brought lunch, Thai food from a place that knew his order by heart. They ate in surprisingly comfortable silence before Jasmine asked the question that had been haunting her. What was he like? Your brother. Dante's hand froze halfway to his mouth. For a moment, she thought he'd shut down, retreat behind the cold mask he wore so well. But then something in him softened, just slightly. Marcus wanted to be a teacher, he admitted, setting down his chopsticks. Elementary school. He loved kids, thought he could make a difference. Used to tutor neighborhood kids for free, help them with homework, teach them to read. His voice cracked slightly. He was the good one. I was the one who chose this life. He got pulled in because of me. Because I needed someone I could trust, and blood was all I had. He would have been a great teacher, Jasmine said softly, meaning it. Anyone who chooses hope over cynicism in this world is rare. Special. My life doesn't leave room for hope. Maybe it should. Their eyes met, and the air between them crackled with something neither could name. Attraction, understanding, the dangerous recognition of 2 people who'd been broken by the same world and somehow found themselves on opposite sides of an unbridgeable divide. Except the divide was narrowing daily, and Dante Cross was beginning to realize that revenge had become far more complicated than a bullet and a body bag. By the end of the 1st week, Jasmine had stopped testing the doors. By the end of the 2nd, Dante had stopped pretending his visits were about security. They talked about everything, music, books, the kids at her foundation, his plans to expand legitimate business operations. Why do you do it? She asked one evening, genuinely curious. The criminal stuff, I mean. You're clearly smart enough to go straight. You have the resources, the connections. Because this is all I know, he replied honestly. My father was a hustler. His father before him. We don't get to choose clean starts, Jasmine. We work with what we're given. That's bullshit. Her bluntness surprised them both. I chose a clean start. You could too. It's not that simple. It never is. But you do it anyway, or you die becoming exactly what you hate most. The words hung between them like a challenge neither was ready to accept. But seeds had been planted, ideas taking root in soil that had seemed too poisoned to grow anything good. And late at night, in separate rooms of the same loft, both of them lay awake wondering what the hell they were doing and why they couldn't seem to stop. On the 18th day of her captivity, Jasmine woke with a memory she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten it existed. I need to tell you something, she said when Dante arrived with breakfast. He'd started bringing food himself, dismissing the guards. About my father. About what he left me. Dante set down the bag of bagels and coffee, his attention sharpening. I'm listening. When I was 19, right before everything went to hell, my father gave me a key. Safety deposit box at First National Bank in Chicago. He said if anything ever happened to him, I should open it. That there was money inside, enough to start over. She met his gaze. I never did. I was too angry, too scared. I threw it in a drawer and tried to forget about it. And now I'm thinking maybe there wasn't just money in that box. My father was paranoid. He recorded everything, kept copies of everything. If he knew he was going to betray your organization, he might have kept insurance. Evidence. Dante's expression hardened. Evidence of what? I don't know. But if there's anything that explains what really happened, why he did what he did, don't you want to know? Don't you want to be sure before you decide what to do with me? It was a calculated risk. The key was in her apartment, which meant leaving the safe house. It meant trusting Dante not to kill her the moment she was no longer useful. But it also meant potential answers, and Jasmine had learned that truth, no matter how ugly, was better than living in uncertainty. Dante studied her for a long moment, searching for deception. Why tell me this? You could have kept it secret, used it as a bargaining chip. Because I'm tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder, and because... She hesitated, then committed. Because I think you deserve to know the truth. Marcus deserves that. Whatever my father did, whatever happened, it should be based on facts, not assumptions. 2 hours later, they stood in her apartment. The guards had kept it under surveillance, but undisturbed. Jasmine retrieved the key from the back of her nightstand drawer, along with a yellowed envelope. There's a letter, she said, her hands shaking as she opened it. I never read it. I couldn't. Dante took the envelope gently, their fingers brushing. The contact sent electricity racing up both their arms, but neither pulled away. He read aloud. Jasmine, if you're reading this, I'm dead and you're in danger. I'm sorry for everything. I tried to do the right thing, but I was in too deep. The FBI promised protection if I testified, but there's a mole, someone in the Cross organization feeding them information, someone who set me up to take the fall for their theft. I have proof. Recordings. Documents. It's all in the box. Give it to the feds, or use it however you need. Just stay safe. Stay away from Chicago. I love you more than I ever showed. Dad. Silence filled the apartment like a held breath. Jasmine felt tears streaming down her face, for the father who'd tried, however imperfectly, to protect her. For the mother who'd paid the ultimate price. For the mess that had destroyed so many lives. There's a mole, Dante said quietly, his voice deadly calm. In my organization. The question is who, Jasmine replied. And how do we prove it? We. He turned to face her fully. You think I'm going to sit in that loft while you investigate who killed my mother and framed my father? Not a chance. I'm in this now. For better or worse. Their eyes locked, and something shifted between them.
Partnership. Maybe more than that.
Definitely more dangerous than either wanted to acknowledge. First National Bank in Chicago, Dante said. We leave tomorrow. And Jasmine? Yeah. Thank you. For trusting me with this. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Because she did trust him, impossibly. The man who'd kidnapped her at gunpoint had somehow become the person she felt safest with. Stockholm Syndrome, her rational mind whispered. But her heart knew it was something else entirely. Chicago in November was exactly as Jasmine remembered. Cold, gray, and full of ghosts. They flew in on a private jet, Dante's resources making travel arrangements seamless. Andre and 2 other men accompanied them, professional and alert. Jasmine watched Andre during the flight. Was he the mole? He'd been with Dante for years, loyal and efficient. But so had Judas, until silver proved more valuable than friendship. First National Bank stood in downtown Chicago like a monument to secrets. They were escorted to the vault by a nervous manager who recognized power when he saw it. Dante's reputation preceded him, even here. The safety deposit box was smaller than Jasmine expected. Inside, a flash drive, financial documents, and a mini cassette recorder straight out of the 1990s. Old school, Dante murmured, examining the recorder. Harder to hack or trace. They listened to the recordings in Dante's hotel suite, doors locked and guards posted. Her father's voice filled the room, younger and more frightened than Jasmine remembered. October 15th. Met with FBI agent Collins again. He's pushing hard for information on the Cross organization. Says they can offer full immunity and witness protection if I cooperate. But something feels off. He knows too much about internal operations. Things even I don't know. I think someone's feeding him information from the inside. More recordings followed, conversations with the FBI, phone calls with mysterious contacts, her father's growing paranoia as he realized he was being set up. Then came the damning evidence, a recording of two men talking, one clearly Andre, the other an FBI agent. Castellano's getting suspicious. We need to move the timeline up. The boss won't like that. He wants this done clean. Cross is already suspicious about the missing money. If we don't pin it on Castellano now, he'll figure out it was me. You said you could protect me. I can. But you need to make sure Marcus goes down hard. No chance of appeals, no possibility he rolls on you later. Dead men tell no tales. Dante's face went absolutely still, deadly calm in a way that terrified Jasmine more than his rage would have. Marcus's suicide wasn't a suicide. No, she agreed quietly. It was murder. Andre knocked on the door, his voice carrying through the wood. Boss? Everything okay in there? Dante's eyes met Jasmine's. A silent conversation passed between them. Trust, fear, determination. Yeah, Dante called back, his voice perfectly controlled. Just reviewing some documents. Give us another hour. They spent that hour planning. The evidence was damning but incomplete. They needed Andre to reveal himself, to make a mistake they could exploit. More importantly, they needed to ensure their own safety. If Andre realized they knew, they were both dead. We pretend nothing's changed, Jasmine suggested. Keep him close, make him think he's safe. He'll see through that. Andre's smart, paranoid. He's survived this long because he reads people. Dante paced the hotel room, his mind clearly racing through options. Unless what? Unless he thinks I'm compromised. Distracted. Dante turned to her, his expression unreadable. By you. Jasmine's breath caught. You want him to think we're
Involved.
romantically. It would explain my erratic behavior, why I kept you alive, why I'm here chasing ghosts instead of running my organization. He moved closer, his voice dropping. It would make me seem weak, emotional. Exactly the kind of leverage Andre would try to exploit. That's a dangerous game. Everything about this is dangerous. He was close enough now that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. But I can't see another way.
Can you?
Jasmine's mind raced through alternatives and kept coming back to the same conclusion. If they wanted Andre to show his hand, they needed to give him a target. And she was the perfect target, the weakness Dante supposedly couldn't resist. Okay, she agreed. But we do this smart. No unnecessary risks. Define unnecessary, Dante said, and there was something in his eyes that made her heart race. Anything that gets us killed before we expose him. That's a pretty broad definition. They were standing so close now that Jasmine could count his heartbeats, could see the fine scars that marked his face and throat. Evidence of a violent life, but also survival. Resilience. We should probably make this convincing, she whispered. Probably, he agreed. The kiss was inevitable. They'd been circling it for weeks, denying the attraction that sparked between them like live wires. But now, with an excuse to give in, neither held back. Dante's hands cupped her face gently, contrasting with the fierce hunger of his mouth on hers. Jasmine's fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, drowning in sensation and heat and the reckless certainty that this was right, even though it was insane. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back in. That was... Jasmine started. Yeah, Dante finished. We should. Probably not do that again until this is over.
Right.
Because it complicates things. Massively. Neither of them moved away. Although, Jasmine ventured, if we're trying to convince Andre, we'll need to do it again. Multiple times. For authenticity. Strictly professional. Absolutely. They stared at each other for a beat, then both laughed. Real, genuine laughter that released some of the tension coiled in both their chests. We're idiots, Jasmine said. Complete idiots, Dante agreed. But we're alive. For now. The reminder sobered them both. Andre was outside that door, believing he'd gotten away with murder and betrayal. Marcus's death demanded justice. And the only way to get it was to play a dangerous game where one wrong move meant death for both of them. Tomorrow, Dante said, we go back to Atlanta. We act like nothing's changed. Like I'm just a man who couldn't kill his enemy's daughter because I fell for her. And we wait for Andre to make his move. And if he doesn't, then we make him. Back in Atlanta, Dante and Jasmine fell into a dangerous rhythm. By day, they played their parts, the crime lord softened by love, the captive who'd somehow captured her captor's heart. By night, they reviewed evidence and planned their endgame. Andre watched them with calculating eyes. Jasmine could feel his assessment every time they were in the same room, could sense him measuring the situation and finding angles to exploit. 3 weeks after Chicago, he made his move. Boss, Andre said during a routine meeting at Dante's headquarters. We need to talk. Privately. Jasmine sat in Dante's office, close enough to seem intimate, but positioned where she could reach the panic button under his desk. They'd prepared for this. Anything you can say to me, you can say in front of Jasmine, Dante replied, his hand finding hers, a gesture that Andre tracked with sharp interest. That's the problem. Andre's voice was regretful, almost apologetic. You've been compromised, Dante. This woman has made you soft. The organization is talking. People are questioning your judgment. My judgment is fine. Is it? You kept Vincent Castellano's daughter alive when you should have killed her. You've been distracted, absent, making decisions based on emotion rather than logic. Andre leaned forward. I'm trying to help you see what everyone else already knows. She's a liability. Let me handle it. The words handle it carried unmistakable meaning. Jasmine's blood ran cold, but she kept her expression neutral. No, Dante said flatly. Boss. I said no. Dante's voice carried absolute authority. Jasmine stays. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Andre's expression flickered. Frustration, calculation, something darker underneath. The men won't follow a leader who puts pussy before profit. The crude language was deliberate, testing boundaries. Dante's hand tightened on Jasmine's, but his voice remained eerily calm. Then, maybe it's time to find new men. Men who understand that loyalty goes both ways. Men who don't steal from their own organization and frame innocent people to cover their tracks. The room went absolutely silent. Andre's face drained of color, then flushed with rage and fear. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm talking about Vincent Castellano's insurance policy. Recordings. Financial documents. Your conversations with FBI agent Collins. Marcus's suicide that you ordered. Dante stood, his presence filling the room with lethal intent. I'm talking about 4 years of believing my brother killed himself because of a testimony your framed job made necessary. I'm talking about you stealing $3 million and making Vincent take the fall.
I'm talking about all of it, Andre. Every
single
lie.
Andre's hand moved toward his weapon, but Taiwo and 3 other loyal men materialized from their positions, guns drawn and aimed. Don't, Taiwo advised calmly. You're done. But Andre wasn't finished. His desperation made him dangerous, unpredictable. In one fluid motion, he grabbed Jasmine, yanking her from her chair and pressing a gun to her temple. Déjà vu, Jasmine thought with surreal calm. Back where we started. You're going to let me walk out of here, Andre snarled, backing toward the door with Jasmine as his shield. Or, I put a bullet in her brain and you get to watch another person you love die. Dante's expression could have been carved from stone, but Jasmine saw the terror in his eyes. The memory of Marcus, of helplessness, of losing someone he couldn't protect. Andre, Dante said carefully, there's no way out of this. Let her go. We can talk. Talk. You're going to have me killed. Just like you've killed dozens of others who disappointed you. Andre was spiraling, his control fracturing. I built this empire while you mourned. I kept everything running while you fell apart. It should have been mine. Maybe it should have been. Jasmine said suddenly, her voice cutting through Andre's rant. Maybe Dante is a terrible leader. Maybe he does make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. Jasmine. Dante started, confused. But here's the thing, Andre, she continued, her nonprofit training kicking in, the de-escalation techniques, the psychology of manipulation. If you kill me, you prove him right. You prove that he chose correctly by protecting me. Because a good leader protects his people. And you've been stealing from yours for years. Shut up. The men you work with, the ones whose families depend on their cuts? You stole from them too. It wasn't just the organization's money. It was theirs. And mine. She let anger seep into her voice, authentic rage for her mother. My mother died because of you. Because you framed my father, and other people came looking for revenge. She bled out on our living room floor while I hid behind a couch. She was innocent, just like Marcus was innocent, just like all the people whose lives you've destroyed for profit. Andre's grip wavered slightly. Around them, the assembled men shifted. Taiwo's expression had gone from professional to personally offended. Is that true, boss? One of the younger guys asked Dante. He stole from our cuts. We have the financial records, Dante confirmed. Years of skimming. Millions of dollars that should have gone to all of you, your families, your futures. He took it and let you think the organization wasn't profitable. The room's energy shifted like a physical thing. Andre felt it, his desperation ratcheting higher. None of you understand, he shouted. I deserve that money. I did the work. I made the deals. You murdered my brother, Dante said quietly, and the words fell like an executioner's blade. Everything else is just noise. But that's unforgivable. The door behind Andre burst open. Federal agents flooded in, led by a man in his 30s who looked hauntingly familiar. Same eyes as Dante, same facial structure, but older, haunted. Marcus Cross, alive and breathing and wearing a federal badge. Andre's shock gave Jasmine the opening she needed. She drove her elbow back into his solar plexus, dropping her weight and twisting away from his loosened grip. Dante was there instantly, pulling her clear while federal agents swarmed Andre. Marcus. Dante's voice broke on his brother's name, years of grief and rage and desperate hope colliding. Hey, big brother, Marcus said, his own eyes wet with tears. Sorry it took so long. The explanations came in Dante's penthouse, federal agents securing the perimeter, while the Cross brothers reunited with an embrace that lasted several minutes. Jasmine watched from the window, giving them space, her own emotions a tangled mess she'd process later. The FBI faked your death, Marcus explained once they'd all settled with whiskey and exhaustion. Agent Collins was dirty, working with Andre. But there were good agents too, ones who realized I was being set up. They got me out, put me in witness protection, and I've been gathering evidence ever since. Why didn't you contact me? Dante's voice was raw. Do you have any idea? I know.
I'm sorry.
But Andre had eyes everywhere. If you'd known I was alive, he would have figured it out. I had to stay dead until we had enough to take him down. Marcus turned to Jasmine. When you opened that safety deposit box in Chicago, it triggered an alert. We'd been monitoring it for years, hoping someone would eventually access it. That's when I knew it was time.
For years, Dante said.
I thought you were dead for 4 years.
I know.
And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Marcus paused. But right now, we have bigger problems. Andre wasn't working alone. He has allies in the organization, people who benefited from his schemes. We need to clean house.
We.
Dante raised an eyebrow. I'm done with witness protection. Done hiding. I want back in, but differently. Legitimately. Marcus's gaze moved between Dante and Jasmine. From what I've seen, you two have been discussing something similar. You've been watching us? Jasmine asked. Had to make sure Andre didn't kill you before we could move. Also had to make sure. He trailed off, uncomfortable. That she wasn't playing me, Dante finished. Smart. And wrong, Marcus admitted. You clearly care about each other. Which is weird as hell given the circumstances. But Who am I to judge? 3 days later, Andre was arraigned on multiple federal charges: murder, racketeering, conspiracy, theft. The evidence was overwhelming. Jasmine testified about her mother, her voice strong despite the tears. Dante testified about Marcus, his control impressive until he wasn't, and broke down describing his brother's supposed suicide. The men who'd worked for Andre, the ones who'd been stolen from, gave statements. By the end, Andre's empire of lies had crumbled completely. But the hardest conversation came that night, when Dante found Jasmine on his penthouse balcony. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice carefully neutral, "about your father's accident." Jasmine's heart sank. She'd been avoiding this, knowing it was coming. "You ordered the hit." "I did. 2 years ago, right after I found out where he was hiding. I wanted him to suffer, to lose everything like Marcus had lost everything." Dante's hands gripped the railing, so hard his knuckles went white. "I'm the reason you're an orphan. I'm the reason you've been alone for 2 years. And I have no right to ask for your forgiveness or understanding or anything else. I needed you to know, before you make any decisions about what happens next." Jasmine was quiet for a long moment, processing. Part of her wanted to rage at him, to hate him for taking away any chance of reconciliation with her father. But another part, the part that had lived through years of her father's choices, knew the truth. "My father locked me and my mother inside our house and ran," she said finally. "He left us to die rather than face his enemies with courage. Everything he did after that, the running, the hiding, it was cowardice, not love. I'm sad that he's dead. I'm sad for what we could have been if he'd made different choices. But his death? That was always coming. You just happened to be the one who made it happen. That doesn't make it okay."
No.
"But it makes it understandable." She turned to face him. "You killed my father because you thought he destroyed your family. Now we know Andre destroyed both our families. So where does that leave us?"
"I don't know," Dante admitted.
"You're free to go. I'll give you money, protection, a fresh start anywhere you want. You never have to see me again. And if I don't want that?" His eyes widened. "Jasmine,